The Theosophical Society in America presents an interview with Dora Kunz, president of the American section, with Father Bede Griffith, who has been the leader of the Shantivanyam Ashram in Tamil Nadu, India, for the past 25 years. Father Griffith's ashram seeks to be a prayer center where people of different religious traditions can meet together and respect one another's beliefs.
Today we have the great pleasure of having Father Bede Griffiths with us, who has an ashram in Tamil Nadu in India, where he has a Christian ashram where he tries to bring the Hindu ideas of religion and combines them with studying the Christian faith. I visited this ashram, and what I thought was very remarkable is how close the villagers feel towards Father Bede and the ashram. There does not seem to be any division, from what I observed, between the simple villagers all around it and the people in the ashram. And I thought this was a beautiful thing to behold. Now can I ask you a question, Father Bede? I think many people in the United States would like to know your point of view on what is there any difference between prayer and meditation?
Yes, prayer is very much the word in the Christian tradition. In the early tradition, they distinguished four kinds of prayer: petition, intercession, praise, and thanksgiving. And that is the normal form of Christian worship, asking God, interceding for others, praising and thanking God. But meditation is something different, and here there's a difference in terminology. In the Christian tradition, meditation is normally understood as reflecting, usually on the gospel or some religious book, and reflecting on it, applying it to one's own life and trying to follow out the direction which is given. That is discursive meditation. But in India, the word meditation is much closer to what in the Western tradition we call contemplation. You see, in India, meditation means recollection, becoming aware of your inner self and awakening to the divine presence within. And that is really what we in the Christian tradition we call contemplation. So there's a real difference there which we need to be aware of. And in our ashram, we have our prayer 3 times, morning, noon, and evening, with petition, with intercession, with praise, thanksgiving, using the Psalms, the Bible. But we also have times of meditation, both morning and evening, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour in the evening. And those are given to what we would call contemplation. That is a method of meditation leading one to experience the presence of God. That is what I feel is the real goal. And so we try to combine really the two traditions, the Christian prayer and the tradition of meditation, which is both Hindu and Buddhist and Indian really, you can say. And of course we very much want to create an Indian Christian tradition. Not to think Christianity is simply a religion of the West, but a Christian in India can open himself to what the Hindu, the Buddhist, the Jain, the Sikh, all the religions of India have to say, so that gradually we have this convergence. We begin to relate to one another and to see an underlying unity. And so that is how largely we understand our ashram to be a center of unity, where we discover the basic unity behind the different religions, while at the same time acknowledging their differences. We don't want simply to merge everything into one, but to see how the one mystery of divine mystery manifests itself in different ways, in different traditions, and they're all interrelated, and they all have this unity behind them. And meditation is really the art of discovering the inner unity behind the religious traditions, awakening to it, not as a thought, an idea, but as an inner experience. That is the real goal. And that is what I call contemplation or meditation in the Indian tradition.
The Christian idea of contemplation and the Hindu view on meditation, have they a similar background?
Yes, I think it is, but I don't think they're identical. Many people think that when you reach mystical experience, you reach an identity of experience. But I believe that the differences continue at that level, that the Buddhist experience of sunyata, the void, is not identical with the Hindu experience of Brahman, of Nirguna Brahman, nor is that identical with the Christian experience of, let us say, of the Godhead, of Trinity. So, again, there is unity and difference at every level.
What is a basic principle you think will bring the Eastern tradition and the Christian faith closer?
Yes, well, that is very fundamental. And I think we all agree, you see, at certain levels, the differences are too great. At the level of ritual, if you go to a Hindu temple or a Christian Eucharist, you're in two different worlds, and you can't really bring them together. And again, on the level of doctrine, you see, many people think that is the level in which we have to debate, and I think there is much we can do at that level. But again, the differences are so great, not only between Hindus and Christians, but between Hindus and Hindus and Christians and Christians. We're all in a world of diversities. And it's only really at this level of the experience of God in the heart that we begin to come to an inner unity. One of the founders of our ashrams, Swami Abhishektananda, took that name, wrote a book called Hindu-Christian Meeting Point in the Cave of the Heart. And that is where we see the meeting has to take place. And of course, in meditation, precisely, one tries to go beyond the body and its feelings, its senses, beyond the mind and its thoughts and ideas, and to awaken to the inner center of one's being, where one is in contact with the supreme reality. And that is the meeting place. But again, I do believe that because we are unities, we are psychosomatic spiritual unity, each of us experiences the one reality in a different way. And I think these differences are important and beautiful. We're not meant all to merge into one, we're meant each to bring a unique mode of experiencing the one reality. They sometimes describe it as the one light shining in many mirrors, and each reflects it, but reflects it in a slightly different way. So there's the beauty of creation is the one manifesting himself in the many, and the many recognizing themselves in the one. And that is really a beautiful experience. So that is to me the meeting place of these traditions. And that is why, of course, meditation is really the center of it. And it's an interesting fact, you see, that in our Catholic tradition, Benedictine monastic tradition, the divine liturgy always took the main place. 7 times a day we used to assemble to praise God, worship, to thank, and to ask for our needs. And that is a beautiful tradition. But it was the main form of prayer in the Benedictine life. But when we came to India, we felt a need to change. We still have our 3 times of prayer, morning, noon, and evening, but we emphasize more these times of meditation, solitary meditation, an hour in the morning at Sandhya, they call it, the meeting of the light and the darkness. That is supposed to be the sacred time for meditation. So early in the morning, as at dawn and at sunset, we have this solitary meditation. And to me, that is more fundamental. That is the point where we go beyond words, we go beyond thoughts, and we try to enter into the unity of experience, the experience of God dwelling in the heart. So that is the point of meeting, really. And this, of course, makes it difficult because not everybody is capable of meditating at that depth. But I think we must recognize that until we reach that level of consciousness, of experience, no real meeting in depth will take place. And it's a mistake to think that we can just mix things together and find a unity in that way. We have to go deep into our tradition, deep into our own inner experience, and only there can we really meet one another and find the unity of mankind. You see, the unity of mankind is not on the physical level, and it's not on the psychological level. Only when we go beyond those levels and experience the divine mystery within do we really meet, and do we really become human. It's very important. We're not fully human as long as we're living on the psychological level, the mind and the will and the rest. Only when we go beyond ourselves, discover that we're parts of a unity beyond ourselves. Only then we really meet, and only then we become fully human. So this is really a way of discovering our full humanity and meeting one another at that level. And to me, that is the goal of humanity today.
I think that's beautifully put, and a beautiful goal for bringing all these faiths together.
But a difficult one.
A very difficult one. It's hard for people to reach that depth of meditation in our modern world.
And yet, you see, there is what we all recognize, an extraordinary wave of interest all over the world, especially among the young people, but really everywhere, an awakening to this experience. And that, to me, is the great hope. As some years ago, mysticism was almost dismissed, but now it's recognized as something fundamental in human experience. And I feel it's a great hope now. See, there is a new age is beginning.
Many young people go to India for this. And of course, many people in the United States go to so many different yogis, I think, for this particular experience.
Yes, and many do really find a very deep experience. We have many coming to our ashram, and many have been to Hindu ashrams, to Buddhist monasteries, have had very deep experiences there. And we find nearly all who come to our ashram are very serious. They're really seeking God. And sometimes they're confused, and they're all in search. But to me, that is, it's something in the last 10 years. There's been a gradual convergence. Now we have 50 or 60 coming to the ashram at a time, and all in search, practically. And that is what we feel, really, the ashram, that's its function, to be a center where people in search of God, search of self-identity, in a sense, to find themselves, can find an atmosphere. You see, the trouble is that the pressure of life in the world around, particularly in big cities, is so great, people get distracted, they lose themselves. And when they come to a place of quiet, where they can meditate, where they can be at peace, and also where they can meet others in the same search, then something begins to take place, a real radical change very often. And we have wonderful experiences, really, people really becoming a new person, after some time. So all that is very, very encouraging. No doubt there are many who don't find the way. I think it's quite true of many who come to India, but there are a great many who really begin a new life in that experience.
What experience in your life made you decide to go to India and devote your life to the marriage of East and West?
That is rather a long story, actually. First of all, I would say, when I was quite young, an undergraduate, or even before, I read the Bhagavad Gita, the Dhammapada, and the Tao Te Ching. And they had a very deep effect on me. No, it was after I was left Oxford, about 25, something like that. And these were a sort of seed which was sown. And then I became a Catholic soon after that, and I was much absorbed in absorbing the Catholic tradition, and this rather went into the background. And then in 1940 I met a very remarkable woman, Toni Sussman. She was one of Jung's first disciples and a psychoanalyst, and had studied yoga under a Hindu yogi in Berlin. And she and her husband, who was a Jew, came to England at the time of Hitler, the 30s, settled in London, and had a meditation center, and she practiced psychoanalysis, and she had all books on Eastern spirituality, and that opened my whole mind to this whole world of the East. And from that time onwards, I began to read and to study, and, to make acquaintance with others who had the same interest. And then in 1948, it must have been about, I met an Indian Benedictine monk, and he was living in Europe, wanting to start a foundation in India. And we became friends. At the time, I was rather occupied, but after a few years, I became free, and we came out together to India in 1955, actually, and started a small ashram near Bangalore. And we proceeded by degrees. He was very interested in Indian philosophy and also Vedanta in general, but he wanted Western style of life. We had tables and chairs and spoons and forks and all the traditional things. What I thought was a very simple life, but it was quite Western. And I soon discovered that this style of life was unknown in the village where we were. It was quite something strange. And so after a year or two, for various reasons, we moved from there, and I went to Kerala. And there we started an ashram in the hills in Kerala, entirely Indian in style. We adopted the kavi, the sacred color in India, the sign of sannyasa, renunciation, to seek for God alone. And we went barefoot, we sat on the floor, we ate with our hands, and we lived in the style of a Hindu ashram. And so that led me much deeper into the whole Hindu tradition. But even then, we were still very much Christian ashram, the liturgy. Actually, we joined the Syrian church in Kerala, and I learned Syriac, and it was a very interesting experience to see an Eastern form of Christianity, not Latin or Greek, but Syrian. And I've always been thankful for that experience. But then in 1968, I was invited to the present ashram, where I am now in Tamil Nadu, and there we began from scratch. It was very interesting. We just started from scratch, as I say, and we became as totally Indian as we could, and we adopted all the traditional customs of a Hindu ashram, and made, as I say, this personal prayer the center of our whole life. And that is how we've been living now for the last 15 years. And so it's been a gradual process for me, and I've been gradually initiated. And I find one changes all the time. At first I was really very Western and very centered in Christianity and only seeing other religions from the outside, as it were. And then gradually one enters more deeply into each tradition. And this, to me, is the great interest. You see, as you open yourself to another tradition, you find your own faith is enriched. Many people think you just get blurred and lose your faith, but the opposite has been mine and many others with me experience, that a new perspective opens on you and you begin to see your Christian faith in a new light. And that actually, is my hope for the world. You see, I feel that Christianity, until now, has moved in a westerly direction and received an almost entirely Western structure of thought and of organization. And I think today we're being challenged to open ourselves to the Oriental tradition and think and rethink and relive our Christian faith in the light of the East. And that is, nobody can say how far that will take us. It's a new world, really, and a new experience. But I think that is the need, because it's not only in Asia that people need this. You see, the great barrier to Christianity in Asia is that they all feel it's a foreign religion. It's a Western form of religion. And until we have it in an Eastern form, it will not be received. But I also feel, you see, that Christianity in the West, almost all the churches, have got stuck to some extent in their own tradition, this Western structure. And they need to be renewed, to discover this other dimension. So I see a transformation, a renewal of Christianity in the West, opening itself to the East and allowing the East to discover Christ not as a Western figure or in Western clothes, as they say, but as really belonging equally to the East and the West. And so we would hope for gradual a marriage to take place. And marriage between equals. You've got to share with one another. We had a very interesting Hindu-Christian dialogue meeting in our ashram about 1975, I think it was. And Monsignor Rossano was the head of the Secretariat for Other Religions in Rome, came to the meeting, and some other bishops and people. And I always remember his speech where he said, we come to share one another's spiritual riches. And that seems to me expressed very well. Each of us has his own riches, and we want to be faithful to our own tradition. It's a mistake to think you just let that go. You have to be faithful to your own tradition and to share those riches with others, but be open to what others have to give to you. And that is why I see a Christian mission today always in terms of dialogue. You're not simply having to give something to others, you're going to give and you're going to receive. And so we all enrich one another. And that seems to me to be the future of humanity, this convergence of religion on the ultimate truth. None of us adequately expresses that ultimate truth. In fact, it cannot be expressed in our human terms. But we're all converging, we're moving towards it, and as I say, the future of humanity is in this convergence of religion on the one truth, which is also, of course, not a theory or a doctrine, but a way of life, a transformation of humanity itself. So that is really our goal.
I think this has been a very nice interview because Father Bede has really talked to the basic ideas which all religions share. And he has done it in such a simple way that thousands of people can try to follow his example of trying to get to the heart of the spiritual basis of all religions. Father Bede has come here and he has written many, many books. The marriage of East and West was mentioned. He has also written a book,
Return to the Center as well.
The Return to the Center. He has written many other books. All these books are available from the Theosophical Publishing House. And they are beautifully written, and I advise all our members to read them. It will be something they will enjoy and learn from. Thank you, Father Bede.